Hey, welcome friends. Hello, here we are. What's the date today? 15th. It was Valentine's Day yesterday here in New Zealand. So 15th of February here in New Zealand, 2023. Welcome. Chat with Matt. Half an hour or so to talk about whatever's going on in your part of the world, whatever's going on in your little circle of influence or your circle of insanity, as it seems to be sometimes. Oh my God. Still, the world keeps on turning in interesting ways. Anywho, here we are. So yeah, I'm in New Zealand, and no, I'm not being battered by a cyclone. It is sort of raining this morning, but no state of emergency here. Well, it is actually declared a state of emergency for the whole of New Zealand, but it has been anything but bad here in my part of New Zealand. But anywho, that's by the by. It's interesting the way that these things are sort of getting presented. I had about 5 or 6 people yesterday and the day before reach out to me to make sure that I was okay, which is lovely. It's lovely that people care, but I'm, obviously interested in what is being presented on the world stage as very important news, that New Zealand is having a cyclone. And I know some parts of New Zealand up in the Bay of Plenty, Tauranga, Coromandel, etc., have had pretty severe weather, no doubt about it. Probably a 1 in 10 year or 1 in 20 year storm. But interesting that is breaking news in all over the world, when other things seem to be going swept under the carpet that are probably far more newsworthy in some respects. Anywho, that's just the way the song and dance is going out there in the world. Let's what are we talking about? What was my little poster? I can't actually lift it up easily. So it was me doing Ekpara. I can't remember what that's called. Ungushtasan? I don't know. Doesn't matter. One-legged squat anyway. Some years ago, I don't know if I could still do that, to be honest, but that's okay. And it basically, the meme says, know that you are loved beyond measure and supported in so many ways. Surrender your ego. Let go of control. Allow your soul to take charge through your open heart and experience this life with a joy that is beyond your mind. Hey, Sister Debbie. Allow yourself to experience this life with a joy that is beyond your mind, right? Because our mind is the article that hangs on to the righteousness, the rules, the judgments around whether something is good and bad, right and wrong, should have happened, shouldn't have happened, etc., right? All of this, it wants to, our little ego with this, hello, Sister Jill, with this mind faculty, wants to control, hello, Sister Jess, wants to control our world, right? Wants to control our world. It wants to achieve what it thinks is right and avoid what it thinks is wrong or bad, right? We've got this idea that we should be able to manipulate the world so that we live in this sort of fairy tale paradise where we only have good things happen and we avoid all of the bad things, and live happily ever after, because we are spiritual and therefore we avoid bad things because we are protected by spirit, right? Or we have the intelligence to recognize when things are going wrong. And the point is, nothing's good, nothing's bad, nothing's wrong. So it's all built on this shaky foundation of delusion that doesn't really recognize the deeper truth, that things are happening in our lives because they serve us to happen, right? And they may be uncomfortable, especially from the perspective of our ego that has been trained to avoid what is perceived as discomfort, what has been educated as a failure, what has been drummed into us as a threat or a danger to our physical existence. And there's nothing wrong with preserving our physical existence, but if we spend our whole life trying to preserve our physical existence, we're not going to get to live our life. That's the point. We're not going to have the experiences. We're not going to take the risks. And of course, then that then can sort of be morphed into, if we're trying to maintain emotional comfort. We're also not going to risk that by having, you know, deeper interactions with people, stepping out and expressing our viewpoints in front of other people who may judge us, may criticize us, may reject us, etc., etc., right? We can start narrowing our life down, or we just keep narrowing our life down into this thing that we perceive as safety, security, avoiding all forms of risk, and we're not living anymore. We're not here actually having experiences that are beneficial to us on a soul level, that are expansive, that are interesting, that are whatever, enjoyable even, right? We start over hierarchying or what is it when you make something more important? We start making important our survival too much, to the point that we can't actually enjoy life, and that's it's a very slippery slope, and it's very easy to get entrained onto that slope. Brother Richard, Rich, how are you, my friend? Out there, it looks cold in your part of the world. You're living in a caravan, so not that I'm against that, but it just doesn't really appeal to me. I enjoy living in temporary abodes, but potentially not in your level of cold. Basically, I'm a wuss. Through my history, have become wussy like. Avoidant of cold. And that might just be because I haven't come to experience it enough to acclimate to it and learn to enjoy the pleasure of living in such climate. Which is an interesting point of inquiry. But anyway, so where are we going? It's not appealing in a trailer. Okay, well, it's good that you've admitted that. Here I was thinking I'm just a wuss, but maybe I'm sensible. But anyway, all the better for you doing it, I guess. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so they reckon. And all experiences are valid, and no doubt your kids will get a lot out of it. So Debbie Love wrote in and said, can we talk about letting go? Can we chat about letting go? We're going to talk about it as well as chat about it. In recent weeks, I've become aware that I may have a chip on my block. I don't trust the world after the last 3 years. And I don't want to go anywhere to be with anyone who shunned me or refused me entry because I chose not to get the jibby jab. I don't want to associate. I'm very angry about it, which isn't good for me and is making me live small. At the same time, I have some unvaxxed friends who have had some very serious protein spike illnesses. Yeah, so let's talk about letting go. The process of letting go is not, I've been talking about this a little bit with my group. This idea of release and letting go is not necessarily getting rid of things altogether, but letting go of the perspective we hold towards things. So, for instance, to let go of fear doesn't necessarily mean that the fear is gone, right? But it does mean that we let go of the influence that the fear is having. We let go of the importance of the fear. We let go of the status that the fear had in our life so that we can now progress past it. And slowly but surely, the fear will becomes so less important in our life that it basically gets eroded out of influence. So the process of letting go is not like we just, have something and then we let it go. I knew I was going to do that, but then I thought, no, I'll catch it. But and it's just gone, right? So, I want to let go of this anger around, the treatment of being ostracized for not choosing to comply. The anger just doesn't disappear, right? You are angry for a reason because your needs weren't met during that time, right? You weren't appreciated for your point of view, etc., etc., right? You weren't accepted as someone who had different points of view. And so from that anger, we create a desire to even the score. We have a desire, like the ego wants to prove that it was right. And we're not happy just to, quote unquote, let it go, right? To let go of all of that judgment around how badly we were treated, how, quote unquote, wrong they were for taking their, stand or their compliance, etc., right? People who just chose to do what they were told, and beyond just choosing to do what they were told, actually made people who were defying that directive, wrong and bad, and they're dangerous and they're creating all of this problem, etc., right? All of this bullshit that went on, all of this us and them division. To let that go is to actually work through the process of acceptance, right? To bring a level of understanding as to why people are so easily entrained into compliance and feel that, if they keep following the rules and the rules will look after them, right? The smallness in them, the lack of confidence that they have in themselves that has them playing that role or taking that stand, etc. So that we can basically, to let go, we have to come back to what's going to serve us now, right? And because the righteous stand of wanting to be vindicated for our points of view it's not going to happen, right? Logically, it's not going to happen. And two, even if it did happen, what does it really change? That's the point, right? The desire to be right can quite often crush our opportunity to be happy. And, we quite often say this, as facilitators, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy in this circumstance, right, in this situation? Because if you're wanting to be right and you're going to hang on to that dogmatically and want to fight and prove and have that chip on your shoulder, then you are going to create a situation where it's very hard to be happy. It's very hard to relax, right? As long as you feel that you've been done wrong, it keeps inciting a form of stress that keeps you in contraction, keeps you shut down, keeps you defensive or aggressive, one or the other, right? Aggressive to defend yourself. And while, quote unquote, I don't trust the world, I think that's an empowered place to be, as long as you can do it with a perspective, a more expansive perspective. We shouldn't trust a lot of the structures in the world that have been supposedly set up to protect us, right? Our judicial system, our education system, our healthcare, sickness management system, right? We shouldn't trust them. We shouldn't trust a lot of the people who are operating in those systems, at least in their official capacity, right? We can trust them as people being people, right? We can trust humans to be humans, right? Which is an interesting point of view, right? We don't trust them to do the right thing, especially from our perspective of what the right thing is, right? But we should be able to trust them that they're human and they're operating under their own history, education, trauma response, right? Programming, etc. We can trust that. So yeah, trusting the world is an interesting concept. And the only way that we can really trust the world is to trust that we will always be delivered situations that are in some way an opportunity, that are in some way beneficial. So that doesn't mean that they appease our ego, these situations, or look good or right, but they're giving us opportunities, right? So Jill said, how do you discern the difference between when progressing needs an active input tweak and when to let go and allow things to roll on? Is it purely the feeling at the moment, coming from the heart rather than the head? I find it so hard to do that first all the time and fall in the coulda, shoulda, etc. all too easily with heaps of what ifs. You are answering my question as I'm writing, perhaps. Yeah, okay, so Jill, how do you discern the difference between when progressing needs an active input tweak and when to let it go? Yeah, you just feel it in your heart. The point is you can keep making active input tweaks and let it go at the same time, right? You can let go of whether your active input tweaks actually yield the result that you thought that they would. And that's the point. Keep interacting with the situation, right? Keep interacting if you feel to, but don't dogmatically hold on to your interaction having to achieve a certain result, right? So, for example, I'll use an example that's sort of pertinent to your situation. You get a feeling that you should phone the solicitor and check up. Then you have the thought, oh, I should just let this go and trust the situation, right? No, you should phone the solicitor. And then if you don't get anywhere necessarily, right, after you've made your best attempt to ascertain that things are going as they should, then you might feel I should just let this go, right? Because sometimes your input, even if it doesn't achieve a result that you quote unquote intellectually thought that you should, has actually stimulated the energy to keep flowing in the right direction. So follow your impulses, but let go of the results that the impulses achieve. That's the point, right? The point is to let go of thinking that we know how things should go. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we suppress our desire to keep interacting with the world as it's going, right? Letting it go doesn't mean to be inert. It doesn't mean to be passive. It just means to let go of thinking we know how things are going to unfold, to let go of the expectations and to let go of the stress around it, right? Let go of the contraction, allow yourself to be loose, but also allow yourself to be interactive at the same time. And don't second guess and overthink and judge, oh, I'm being controlling right now. If you feel to do it in your heart, then do it. Don't do it from a controlling point of view. Do it from a intuitive point of view. No, I felt to do this, so I'm doing it, right? You're not trying to control it at all, but you may look like the squeaky wheel, right? You may look like someone who is interfering because you keep inquiring or whatever, but you're doing it in a loose and open way where you're not sort of dogmatically holding on to what you need from the interaction. Hopefully that helps. So hopefully that, yeah, hopefully that helps the whole thing around what letting go is. So in Deb's case, letting go of this anger, right, is a part of accepting that you are angry. Your needs have not been met. And now to help you let go of the anger, it would be beneficial to recognize what your needs are now. And then to move forward into that, right? Because it seems to me right now that you are angry about how you were treated before, and now you are angry about what's ensued, which is you basically removing yourself from society out of out of a fear, really, right? Out of fear of spike proteins, out of fear of having conflict maybe with these people, right? Out of a desire to not associate with people who have shunned you in the past or have taken a certain direction. Which, you know, if you hang on to that, right, the opposite of letting go is hanging on to something, it's going to create a situation where you remove yourself completely from society, which isn't necessarily a bad thing unless you're resenting the fact that you're no longer partaking in society, right? The point is, well, a point is, it's not the point, you know, to speak to your last things, some of my unvexed friends have had very serious spike protein illness. We're energetic beings, right? Yeah, influences are out there in the world, but we can overcome anything, to be honest, right? I have, you know, I'm obviously unvaxxed as well and walk through the world and, you know, all the time in various places where everyone is vaxxed. And I haven't had any spike protein illnesses. Why is that? Potentially because I don't think about it. I'm not scared of it. And I don't really buy into that as a concept, right? I don't buy into that as a concept. So we are definitely a representation of our beliefs. And so if we're believing that something is dangerous, then something is dangerous. That's That's just how it works. So, and I know people come up with, oh yeah, but I know someone who was, you know, attacked by a shark and they never worried about sharks. Or I know someone who, you know, had the experience would have benefited them. This is the thing. It's not that we control the world so nothing bad happens to us because we don't worry about anything, right? It's that things happen and we choose not to make them bad. Right? So even if I was to be influenced by spike proteins in a way, I would assume, my first assumption is this is a beneficial experience for me to have, right? And therefore I wouldn't make it an illness. I would consider it an opportunity to overcome a challenge. I would consider it most likely, in, you know, based on what I know myself to do with any particular symptomology that arises in my body, is this is an opportunity to release something. Something is coming up to release right now. So what some would call spike protein illness, I would consider a purification event. And that's how I term it in my brain, in my belief system. And so that's what I go through. I go through a purification event. I don't go through an illness that now needs to be fixed, right? So, which is completely much easier, because a purification event just means that I keep myself clean and I keep holding space for myself and I look after myself and my body gets rid of the toxins that have come up and I come out the other side with more freedom than I went into the experience with, right? It's a beneficial experience. Therefore, I'm holding a positive attitude towards the experience. As opposed to, oh no, I've got sick, something bad's happened and now I need to fix it. This is all that spike protein that I got, you know, and creating a whole contracted relationship with the experience that then accentuates the symptomology and locks the whole thing in place because we are resisting it. We're making it wrong. We're fighting against it, and that locks the whole thing in our energetic field and creates a much bigger issue out of something that could have been perspectivized in a much more empowered and beneficial way. So the point is not to be scared of the world and not to be scared of whatever could happen to you, because if you are choosing to live in a world of opportunity rather than a world of threat, then everything can be perspectivized as an opportunity. And while you might think that that's somehow delusional or toxic positivity, it actually works, that you live a joyful life when you choose to see things as opportunities rather than to see them as threats and dangers and attacks, right? You know, I was just talking yesterday with someone about how relieved I am that we're no longer in this situation where we're being, what's the right word? Asked, I'll use that word, mandated to wear a mask everywhere. Because every time I went out without wearing a mask, right, because I chose not to, as an act of non-compliance and an act of choosing to show the world that we don't need to wear masks, right? But as a sensitive empath, feeling everyone's energy, or feeling some people didn't give a fuck, right? They were wearing a mask because it was just the easier thing to do. They didn't want to think. But other people were completely bought into the idea that the masks were saving everyone from this horrendous disease, right? And there's a lot of science, and I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot of science that shows that masks actually are very ineffective at doing that, and actually quite counterproductive to health. But the point is it was incredibly uncomfortable for me to go anywhere doing that, right? And it would have been much easier for me to just put the mask on. And, you know, with my mentality, I could have quite easily put the mask on and not been had the negative side effects of wearing a mask and rebreathing in all of my own bacteria, etc., right? Not being able to purify myself and creating a breeding ground of all sorts of pathogens within the mask. I could have done that, and I would have been emotionally and energetically much more comfortable doing that. But I chose to maintain my integrity and do what I felt was right, which was incredibly uncomfortable, but doing the right thing. So what was my point in mentioning all of this? Right, so today, without all of that bullshit, I'm much happier going out into the world, because before it took quite a lot of my energy and my, what's the right word? Intention to hold myself strong enough to be able to do that, to be able to keep radiating my light and my joy out when I could quite easily perceive, very easily feel, because I'm energetically sensitive and empathic, people's rejection of me, people's anger towards me, people feeling that I'm a threat, people feeling that I'm selfish, people that feeling that I'm doing the wrong thing, getting reflected at me as I walk through the supermarket, walk through the hardware shop, right? And me having to be strong against that so that I don't crumble in that energy, right? Of that attack, that energetic attack that's going on, that black magic, whatever you want to call it, right? People sending their daggers in the direction. So I'm quite relieved that we're not in that situation anymore, and I can walk freely and much more easily radiate my light as I walk through places, because I'm no longer drawing that attention, that negative attention in my direction. But the point is, I don't make it wrong that I had that opportunity to develop that develop that ability to do it anyway, right? To be challenged, to be pushed out of my comfort zone, and to actually walk through the supermarket without a mask and get all of that energetic attack in my direction, and know that I could manage that. Even though it was uncomfortable, even though it wasn't my ideal way of living, it was an opportunity for me to prove that I was capable of doing that, to overcome some levels of my fear of authority, as I had to walk past the fucking, the security guard that they had stationed at the front of the supermarket, right? Getting people to comply and telling them, no, I'm exempt, right? As they challenged every time that you'll go in, right? So having that opportunity was a net benefit to me, even though it was incredibly uncomfortable at the time. And even though right now I'm quite relieved that I can go out into the world and not have to create that situation where I'm capable of doing that. But having done it in the past, I know I could do it again in the future. Whereas when I first started, it was incredibly traumatic. It was incredibly traumatic. And to be honest, when it first happened, in some situations, I'd put a mask on. Like to go into some situations, like a bank or something like that, I'd put the mask on, because the level of authority in those places was just too much for me to cope with, right? Too much for me to feel that I could overcome. As it progressed, I got to the stage where I could go into the bank without a mask on, because I'd practiced enough going into the supermarket and going into the hardware and going into this and that, and the narrative was starting to fall apart and more people were starting to not wear a mask. So the point is this is not about masks necessarily. This is about choosing to see things as opportunities rather than to see them as a bad thing that shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. Well, it did happen, and it was an opportunity if you chose to take the opportunity, right? To see it as an opportunity as opposed to see it as a wrongness that I had to endure. It was an opportunity for me to grow stronger. It was an opportunity for me to align with my integrity and to step past my fears, right? Fear of authority, fear of being judged by public, fear of being unappreciated, right? Even though I choose to walk in the world as a blessing for all. That's my choice, right? That's my intent. I choose to walk in the world as a blessing for all, and yet people are hating on me, right? And that's hard. That's hard to take. It's hard to take given my history, my old history, right? So, this is the point, Deb, to overcome the anger and to overcome the desire, to let go of the desire to just stay out of society because these people shunned me in the past. It's to just reperspectivize everything that has happened and everything that you have the opportunity to do now. We don't need to prove anything to these people. There's also, like, the science is just overwhelming now. Not that it's being publicized, and most of these people who are going to comply with whatever happens next aren't being presented the science, and that's not likely to happen in the short term anyway. But it's enough for us to know in our hearts, and we don't need to be right. We just let go of that. We just do what feels in integrity for ourselves, and to be happy with that, and even to find acceptance that we will be challenged again in the future, and we've been challenged in the past, and we don't need to make that wrong. Jill said, and this was, sorry, I didn't read this. I probably should have read this a while ago. You're spot on, the control issue thing again, but I guess like throwing a stone in the pond to cause a ripple. Yeah, exactly. So the point is, yeah, you pop the stone in, and while it doesn't necessarily you know, do what you anticipated it doing, the ripples spread out in all directions. And the fact that you are choosing to follow your heart is all that's important, right? So if you get the impulse to do something, the intuitive hit to do something, then do it, but don't do it in a controlling way. Let go of the idea of how anyone else might judge you, because other people could easily judge you as being controlling for choosing to phone up. But if you're not doing it with a controlling mentality, then it doesn't matter, right? So we have to let go of how other people perceive us. We have to let go of how we've been programmed to believe that certain actions are controlling and other actions are more fluid and letting go. It doesn't matter about the action. What's important is your energetic intent, your foundation, your attitude towards whatever actions you are taking. And no one can really judge that from the outside. So we need to let go of worrying about how other people judge us, and we can also let go of judging others based on what we see them doing and thinking, oh, they're being very controlling doing that. We don't know necessarily. Sometimes, of course, we have a deeper energetic understanding of what they're doing, and we can see that they are in their fear and in a control mentality. But again, that awareness might be useful to us, but it doesn't need to become a judgment that we hold as us being righteous and them being wrongness. Is that how it goes? Righteous and wrongness? But but we do it all the time, right? Our egos love to climb the pecking order by pointing out other people who are being wrong and when we're being right. And that's a valuable thing to become aware of, so that we can relax out of that mentality and that attitude. And it only really comes into play when our egos are feeling small and vulnerable anyway, that we want to see other people as bad so that we can be more right. And the only reason we do that is because our ego is scared that maybe it is bad or wrong. And so we want to at least be above some other people so that we're not at the bottom of the wrongnesses. Jill said, somebody once described it as being the squeakiest wheel, so you get oil applied to lubricate the issue. Yeah, and sometimes that is required. Sometimes being silent is not going to, in today's world anyway, in today's world, the way that it's set up, right, which is not ideal, but it is what it is, and we have to work within what is present right now. We do need to make some noise sometime, otherwise we're easily forgotten and don't progress up the priorities of the person who needs to do something to move a thing on from us. Hey, Sister Martha. So don't be scared of being the squeaky wheel, but also don't take the role on of having to be the squeaky wheel, right? It's not that it's right to be the squeaky wheel, but it's not wrong to be the squeaky wheel. It has it's a tool that has its day, right? That has its time and its place. So don't be frightened of being the squeaky wheel, but you don't have to be the squeaky wheel. It's not always necessary. Just trust your heart, right? Just trust your heart. And you know the difference between just a fear entering your head, thinking, oh, I wonder if they're doing anything, I wonder if, and really getting the impulse, I should phone them and just check. And then do it, right? But don't do it from having to definitely get the answer and have your... Don't ever think that you're going to get your doubts pacified, right? Because doubts can't be, or at least if they are, they won't be for long. That's the point. You're not supposed to be doubt-free. None of us are supposed to be doubt-free. We all have to dance with our doubts. The point is to be confident that the doubts are just what we're releasing. The doubts are just the old energy. And, you know, we have a deeper level of insight or intuition beneath all of that doubt. And if we can just let go of allowing the doubts to predominate, then we can access what we know to do. It's not easy, and it's a progression, right? This is the point. None of us do it perfectly. All of us can do it better. And none of us are failing. We're all just having experiences that help us progress. And there's no rate at which you should be progressing, right? There's no correctness around that. It is what it is. So hopefully that helps, friends. Great question. Thanks, Deb, on letting go. Hopefully I have delivered some information that helps you and others progress through what is going to be an ongoing issue on this planet, I believe, for at least medium term. You know, decade or so, probably, in some form or another. We're quite hopeful that things are going to get easier for us, but I don't know that they will. Right? But I do believe we will get stronger if we keep choosing to interact with the world from the point of view, the perspective that it's an opportunity, right? All of this shit that's going down is an opportunity, as the external structures are going to continue to disintegrate. And as they do so, they are going to act out in ways that are rather intense. And so we're going to have many more opportunities to dance with intense, what's the right word? Intense attempts to control us, to push us down, to keep us small by presenting fear-based narratives. These fear-based narratives are going to become more wild. You know, a lot of people are talking about now how the next one is the alien invasion type scenario that is going to be presented to us as another distraction and another idea to keep us, you know, in fear and out of living our lives expansively and basically out of becoming just the light that we are. Because as the more of us just do that, the vibration naturally rises, and those beings who are in power at the moment won't be able to maintain their power because the vibration of the population will become unmanageable for them. And that's how it's going to happen. And so the point is just to keep relaxing out of any fear-based narratives that are presented in our way, and to do so in a way that's visible to others, because as we choose to relax out of these narratives, others will find the confidence to do so as well, at least some of them. Not all of them, of course. Some people are going to buy hook, line and sinker into the next fear-based narrative and start, you know, running around doing exactly what those in power want them to do, right? Panic, etc., and spread fear and you know, all of that stuff. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to do that. Meanwhile, a whole heap of shit is going down around, you know, this disintegration experience, and some of it's going to be deeply disturbing and very unpleasant and something that none of us really want to see. You know, like the amount of pollution that's just been you know, occurred in this crazy thing that happened with the train in somewhere in Ohio, I can't even say that word, right? That state in America, which has, what's the name of the town? Serbia or something. It's like the name of the town is another country, which is confusing to start with. But anyway, lots of conspiracy around all of that. It's, you know, interesting. Meanwhile, they'll keep talking about aliens and balloons getting shot down and cyclones in New Zealand, etc., and you know, take the attention away from what they don't want you to see. Anyway, East Palestine, that's right. Fuck hell. Yeah. As if Palestine needs any more issues. But no, it's a town or a province or something in America. Anyway, I didn't read Jules' last thing. I took myself out of the situation today and had lunch with some wonderful friends in Maidenhead, located on an island at a lock gate on the Thames. Intensely beautiful, calm, timeless view, very relaxing for a couple of hours. Yeah, and there's no reason that you can't take that relaxation back into the situation, right? The situation is an opportunity for you to maintain a relaxed and empowered attitude when you don't have control of what is going on around you, right? And where other things and entities have a degree of influence over what you perceive as your important to your survival, e.g. large sums of money in your house, right? It's not easy. It's not easy, but that's the opportunity. So it is what it is. Anyway, friends, as per usual, I've gone over time, I believe. Yes, definitely. So I will love you and leave you there. If you have any questions ongoing and you want to dance with any of that, or you want to reach out for some personal help or whatnot, then don't be shy. Just pop a message on and we can take it from there. Much love to you all. Bye for now. Namaste.